I'm speaking with Joan Miller, physical therapist, expert myofascial release practitioner, and instructor of John F. Barnes' Myofascial Release approach courses. Hi, Joan.
Hello, thank you.
Joan, can you tell us a little bit about your own journey to discovering myofascial release, and particularly why you decided to dedicate so much of your career to this particular form of treatment?
Yes, I was in physical therapy for about 6 years before I found myofascial release, and it's interesting because I kind of found it by accident, but it was the best quote-unquote accident I would have ever had. I was always interested in my manual therapies, treating musculoskeletal orthopedics, and I was taking manual therapy classes, all different approaches in order to better my skills, enhance my patient care for the area of interest. And I just happened upon someone mentioned that there was a very interesting class being given in Florida, which is where I live at the time, and that this class would be very interesting. That's all I knew about it, whereas most people know much more about myofascial release than that. This was in 1986. I went to class, and I have to say it was so astonishing. Just the difference in the approach and looking at that whole person and treating the whole person, the difference in the quietness of the work and the approach to it rather than a specific joint technique or soft tissue technique. I went back, I was pretty wowed. I went back, I had to work the next 4 days in the clinic and come right back and take MFR2 the very next weekend. Well, those 4 days in the clinic changed everything. I just was in disbelief as to how incredible the results were after one seminar. So I went right back to 4 days later, and I said to John Barnes, oh my gosh, I love this work. This is incredible. I can't believe this is truly the missing link, as he called it. And I want to do this more. And he said, after you take this class, take the next class, and then maybe you want to be interested in being a lab assistant. And I said, oh, I would love that. So I did the next class, and later that year, I started helping on courses because we have a lab assistant to help students with hands-on techniques. For every technique that we teach, somebody helps you hands-on so that you really get the feel of it. This work is about the feel. We can talk about it, but it's really about the feel. And that was all she wrote. From there, it was helping, and then starting teaching, and it was a huge journey, and I know that it's made the biggest difference in my life, both personally and professionally.
You know, obviously I'm a big fan of it too. I find that everyone comes at it as if we're all touching the elephant. We all have our own kind of approach to it. So would you mind sharing, help us understand from your perspective? I know that it's really John's work, but if you could tell us from your perspective, what is myofascial release, and what do you think is so unique about the myofascial release approach that makes it so effective?
I think one of the biggest things that I like to bring out about myofascial is that John really was able to delve into this very differently than most. Most people teach a very straightforward linear approach. This is a non-linear technique, non-linear treatment, non-linear approach. So what we do is we look at the whole person. Myofascial release talks about the fascia as a connective tissue through the whole body, connected completely from head to toe, from front to back, at every level, so that when we're treating someone and we touch them anywhere, we're actually working everywhere in the body. Also, it's a big component is that we're treating the fluidity of the system. What I had learned in manual therapy prior to that was muscles, joints, movement, and that's great. It's very effective and helpful. But nothing else comes to the body as in treating the fluidity of the body, meaning that within that fascia, the connective tissue, there is a fluid ground substance. And this work, this approach, changes the fluidity of the ground substance. And we're treating from cellular health. Nothing else that I know of does that. When we treat down to the cellular level, you are truly treating the health of the whole person.
And you've been teaching John F. Barnes courses since 1987.
Yes, in 1987, John asked me to, if I would be interested in teaching an introductory course, because as popular and as incredible as he was and people becoming more aware, he didn't have the time or the availability of practice to do an intro course. He was teaching MFR1, unwinding MFR2. So we put together an introductory course that we called soft tissue mobilization, which is now called myofascial mobilization. At the same time, another two therapists and he developed a pediatric introductory course. Those courses are still being taught now as the 2-day introductory. So I taught that in 87, 88, and 89. In 89, John said, you know, I use all of the other manual therapies integrated in with myofascial release. I would like to put together a course that integrates all of this material and uses myofascial as the basis. Would you like to do that? I said, oh, I would love it, because again, manual therapies were my passion. So for about a year, we worked on it, kind of brainstormed, put together, and in 1990, January of 1990, we taught the first Fascial Pelvis Course, and then again in the fall of that year, and we co-taught. We were there together. He taught some techniques, I taught some techniques. We talked about it. He talked to the theory with everyone, and we realized that this was really a great thing because people responded. They loved it because it was putting together all of those pieces and treating the pelvis in a way that balances the pelvis and the low back. That's the basis for everything in the body. If the pelvis is balanced, everything else can move better, be more free, be more functional. So the basis really is the pelvis. So then that was when I started teaching the fascial pelvis on my own, was in 91, after we did the first ones in 1990. And 25 years later, I never get tired of it. It's always refreshing. I love seeing people in class, the therapists in class, being wowed by the amazing results of myofascial release and integrating these techniques.
Yeah. Well, can you share with us kind of a particular wow moment that you have had in your career? I'm sure there's thousands, but
I've had so many. A recent one, very interesting, and surprisingly, it's someone that only came 2 times, which is very unusual. Once people experience this work, they're usually very committed to staying in this work to stay healthy. Even after you treat the initial problem that might come with, they like to keep coming occasionally or once a month or every 6 weeks to maintain good health, as we all encourage that treatment for ourselves and others. This gentleman that came was very interesting. He this family has a tire store. Very unusual for me to have somebody doing manual labor coming that often, because I have a private practice, word of mouth practice, and it's a little unusual. He had had an injury about 15 years earlier in which he lifted something that was much heavier than expected and injured his back severely. A couple of years later, had back surgery. Unfortunately, it was a failed back surgery. Some years later, had another back surgery that made it even worse, and a third back surgery for fusion. He needed to work manual labor in this tire business for his family, for his livelihood. And when he came in, he was on so much pain medicine. Every couple hours, he was taking pain medicine, and he was completely forward posture, completely flat affect, didn't make eye contact, and told me the story of excruciating pain. Couldn't do anything but work, couldn't help with the kids at home, all of that. What I was telling him is, in a very basic way, is how important it is to treat the whole person. Even though his pain was all in the low back, lumbosacral, he was so bent forward that I explained to him how much that was causing pressure on his back. So the very first day, which usually the first treatment, I only do a certain amount of treatment because you've done a whole evaluation. I did a lot of opening anteriorly, working at the psoas, working in the upper body, bringing the head back, opening lumbosacral, and to me that was just a start. He stood up. He was almost completely straight postured. His head was back. His eyes were bright. He made eye contact. He couldn't believe the difference. I, after 30 years of doing this, could barely believe the difference. He came back another time, told me all his family noticed. He was able to work all day without lying down 10 times. He was able to pick up the kids. He was able to play games with his younger children, play sports with the older children. His wife was thrilled. He could work more. It was truly unbelievable, and he only came 2 times. And that was probably one of the most unusual, humongous changes in such a short period of time. We see incredible results, but that was just amazing. Amazing.
Pretty spectacular, yeah.
Pretty spectacular.
You've talked about, kind of changed the subject just a slight bit about the actual techniques that you're applying, and because John Barnes is quite a big man and you are not a big or a man, right?
Yes.
And you've adapted a lot of the techniques for yourself.
So one of the things that I was always taught, and I think I had to ingrain just because of need, was good body mechanics. So especially when I started teaching, because now you're showing other people how to do it, I couldn't do it always the exact way John did it, because John is a much bigger person than I am. And you have to treat every kind of patient at every size, every level. So I somehow found a way with body mechanics to adapt this work and the techniques, and it seemed to work really well. And as I was teaching, what some of the smaller women therapists would say is, wow, that's so much easier this way, because they didn't realize that they could do it, because it was very difficult for them to do it the way John teaches it. John is beyond gifted and has this most incredible touch, but at the same time, he's taller, he's bigger, he's stronger, and so there's a piece of that even though we never force with this, that it just makes a difference of how to do it. So I found a way to adapt that, and particularly in the Fascial Pelvis Course that I teach, it's worked beautifully, and it helps the smaller therapists able to adapt as well. And it's really, I tell people, it's not about strength, it's all about body mechanics, because this work is not forcing, it's just about working properly.
Excellent. For those of us, I'm going to try to combine this idea, because you are also an entrepreneur and you run your own therapy business. You also have chosen not to use insurance. You have clients who've chosen to come to you despite that. You talked a little bit about value is really what I was trying to, sometimes when people are trying to determine whether they're going to go through their insurance or whether they're going to come to a private clinic, sometimes they need to hear your perspective.
One of the things I tell them when they call, and again, my practice is all word of mouth, so they usually come with a good expectation. They're usually calling with, so-and-so said you helped them so much. They already have a good expectation, which is very valuable. And one of the things I explain to them is one of the hallmarks of Myofascial Release is that we try and find where the problem is coming from. Most people call because of some kind of pain or some kind of restriction. We treat to find not just how to change the restriction or the pain, but where it's originating from. So that's very different from traditional medicine, traditional treatment. We're trying to get to the core of it, to where it originates. So they, in turn, feel like, oh my gosh, this is different, this is valuable. And that's why I like to give the value talk, that it's all, to me, about time and money, and that if it's valuable to them, that they will be willing to spend the money to pay privately versus going through their insurance. If it's time is valuable, and so again, they're spending their time, I'm spending my time, but when they feel like, wow, this is incredible, then to them it's valuable. To me, the time is valuable. I never want someone to waste their time or their money. And if it's not right for them, then it doesn't work. And patients, to me, the most important thing that patients say is not, I can bend better, I can move further, I can walk further. What they say that's so valuable is, I have my life back. And when they say, I have my life back, there's almost nothing more valuable than that, because health is the most important thing that we can have. Nothing is as important as our health.
Absolutely. Where would someone go to learn more about this approach? What do you recommend if someone's trying to learn more?
The best thing, and I try and encourage both people in class, therapists in class, and even my patients, is to go to John's website, which is myofascialrelease.com. He has so many resources of articles, there's so many classes to take. There's a class that is for patients to take for their own care called the Healing Seminar, so that they can learn how to treat themselves, how to treat their loved ones, or loved ones can treat them. Therapists have a humongous host of classes, a range of classes they can take to enhance their experience with it, their knowledge with this work. Patients can read so many resources in John's website, and his book, this is more of a therapy book. Then there's the Healing Ancient Wounds, which is his more story book, the story of how this came about, and patient stories and therapist stories. So there's a lot of resource out there for them to do that with.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your efforts to bring this important treatment to the world.
And thank you for the interview.
It's been a pleasure. I'm going to just show that people have been back there in your huge class. Thank you so much.
Thank you.